So thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Brian Crooks, and I am the Interim Planning Services Manager with Richland County. And with me tonight is Megan Sullivan, the Sustainability Planner for Richland County. And we're here to talk about the Flood Buyout Land Management Survey as it relates to properties from the 2015 buyout process. And so we're going to be kind of giving an overview of the project as well as going into some details as it relates to the survey, really discussing some final results, addressing comments, questions, and talking about some next steps related to such. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Megan to start us off.
Great, thank you. So the agenda for this evening is to discuss the purpose of this meeting and background information related to this project. We'll go over the final results from the survey, and then we'll answer any questions or comments and discuss the next steps for this project. The purpose of this meeting is to talk about the intention behind the Flood Buyout Land Management Survey, to discuss the final results, and to answer any questions or comments you may have. This meeting is not for the Gills Creek Greenway, any projects that the City of Columbia has in the area, or any other ongoing projects or development. Please use the chat box to submit your name and question or comment if you would like to do so during the presentation, and then we'll answer all of those at the end. For a little bit of background, after the flooding, which occurred in October of 2015, a major disaster declaration was issued, and this allowed Richland County to apply for FEMA disaster relief funds. Richland County was able to acquire 20 properties in the area around Timberlane Drive through a flood buyout process using those FEMA funds. Because of the elevated risk of flooding on these properties, Richland County is responsible for removing any structures and converting the sites into natural areas that will be able to better absorb the floodwaters. And on the right-hand side of the screen is a map of where the properties are located, so we can give you all a moment to look at that. A survey was previously sent to the residents of this area to gauge their interest in different types of land use that will be allowed. The survey that we did this year was a re-engagement effort with the same survey format in order to determine if the opinions of residents have changed over the last few years. And you can see a copy of the survey on the right-hand side. This hard copy of the survey was mailed to residents on Friday, February 5th, and the survey closed on Friday, March 26th. The first public meeting was held on March 18th. If you were not able to attend that meeting, you can find the recording on the Richland County YouTube page. It's listed as the Flood Buyout Land Management Survey meeting. There were also a few common questions that were asked at the previous meeting and since then, so we'll go over some of those now. One of those was how many homes received the survey, and we sent 225 hard copies of the survey to homes located primarily within the Timberlane Drive area. And these homes were determined to be those that were most likely to experience any impacts from the land management outcomes. All of the flood buyout properties have undergone demolition. In total, this was 57 properties for the Richland County Flood Buyout Program, and the properties that were acquired along Timberlane Drive are included in this. So these next two slides will be illustrating the final results of the survey. The graph you're looking at now is composed of the answers from respondents who live in the target area around Timberlane Drive. We also created a second graph, which is on the next slide, to illustrate all of the survey responses in total, because we did have an influx of answers from people who live in Richland County, but outside of the target area. So from the target area, the total number of responses came to 83. The most common response received was for naturalizing the space and adding a trail followed by just naturalizing the space, which is similar to what we talked about in our last public meeting and is also similar to what was found from the previous installment from the survey. The final number of responses in total is 231. The most common response received for naturalizing the space, received was for naturalizing the space and adding a trail. And that was followed by creating a green space and adding a trail. And most of the answers for the final results in total were submitted online. So from the land use components that are available, the most chosen was some form of active use. And an active use could be a naturalized or green space with a trail. It can also be an active green space with specific dedicated uses. The second most chosen is a form of passive use, and this includes just naturalizing the space, creating a passive green space, or installing a stormwater project. And the least chosen was no determined use, and this included the options for leasing the properties. This slide will give you a little better idea of what the different active use land management choices can look like. The naturalizing trail will have a naturalized look with a pervious surface walking trail and will heavily incorporate trees and native plants. The active green space will have a more manicured turf appearance and also incorporate trees and native plants. But this choice will have a dedicated activity area like a kickball field or a fitness park. The green space and trail will have a mixture of manicured and natural turf, a pervious surface trail, and will also include trees and native plants. This slide will give you a little better idea of what the different passive use land management choices can look like. So both the naturalized and green space uses will be similar in appearance to the ones that we previously talked about. However, there will be no trail or dedicated active use for these choices. The passive naturalized option will heavily work towards reforestation and wildlife reclamation in the area. And the third passive use option is a stormwater project. This would include the use of best management practices to mitigate flooding and runoff in the area. So if you have any questions or comments at this time, please type them into the chat box and we'll be addressing them as they appear.
All right. Well, if we don't have any comments or questions at this time, you can submit any additional comments or questions that you have later on to Megan, and her information is down at the bottom of this slide. So at this time, Megan, I would say let's go ahead and continue forward if there are no comments or questions. But if any do appear in the chat, we can address them at that time.
Sure. After this meeting, the next step will be to finalize the engagement process by reviewing and compiling all of the survey results, questions, and public comments. After that, we'll analyze the preferred land use options and make a decision for appropriate land management techniques based upon constraints of the site. We will then craft the land management concept and design, followed by collaborating with relevant partners and securing funding sources to fully implement the land management strategy. And finally, we have a list of potential partnerships for land management and potential funding sources. A lot of these are local organizations. And if you know of any other organizations that would be a good fit for a partnership, please feel free to let us know. And here's our contact information again. If you have any questions or comments that you can think of later, or if you're potentially watching this recording on YouTube, feel free to reach out with us with any questions or comments that you have.
I guess at this time, are there any new comments or questions from the attendees in relation to the information presented this evening?
Or if you'd like us to go back to a previous slide to look at something again, you can let us know as well.
Well, all right. Well, with that, I guess we will conclude this evening's presentation. And again, as Megan mentioned, we are recording this presentation and we'll look to have it posted on the county's YouTube page. So if you know of anyone that was interested in attending but was not able to make it, you can direct them to the presentation there. And again, any additional questions or comments, feel free to reach out to Megan or myself at the information listed on the slide here. And we thank you for your time and your interest in the project. And we look forward to the future outcomes with the flood buyout properties. So that we thank you and we appreciate your time this evening.